to executive committee for the purpose of moving forward in the hiring process for the residency officer, and to update to the board regarding a personnel retirement request. So I need a motion. Glenn, a second. Scott, all those in favor? Motion passes 5-0. We're adjourned. Okay, before we begin, we just need a motion to, I guess we do the pledge before I do the motion.
No, you take a
Okay,
motion.
we just need a motion to return from executive session to the regular meeting. Krista, and a second by Glenn, thank you. All those in favor? And motion passes 5-0. Okay, and now, Aaron, would you lead us in the pledge sheet?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll start with administrator's remarks. Dr. Gosh, you want to start?
I would love to, thank you. I have two comments this evening. The first has to do with enrollment and class size. So in preparation for the 2020-2021 budget, I'm going to take some practice on that. We have convened a working group to examine our current and projected class sizes. So this group will examine our historical trends, we'll review the class size guidelines outlining our policies, all in the hopes of making staffing recommendations and FTE allocations for next year. So this will be just one way that we elicit feedback in the budgeting process. And at our November 26th Board of Education meeting, we will share these recommendations along with the demographers report in order to help us set the stage for 2021. And finally, the Tri-States Consortium. So next week, we welcome our colleagues back from the Tri-States Consortium for a follow-up visit from their study several years ago. You may remember that Tri-States is a professional learning organization that also serves as our accreditation entity. So in January of 2017, a group of teachers and administrators came in, stayed in the district for 3 days, did a really thorough study of the SCP, more specifically the impetus for us creating it, and the buy-in of the need for the 21st century skills that are outlined in the plan. So part of the accreditation process is that they come back to hear our progress and to provide feedback on our next steps. So we look forward to their return and the valuable support that they always provide. That concludes my comments.
Thank you. Mr. Harrington, have a second?
Okay, good evening, everyone. Just a quick note of thanks to Mr. Carlson, our Assistant Superintendent of Business and Operations, Ms. Liz Kennedy, our Director of Pupil Personnel Services, and Ms. Don Marie Mori, our Registrar, for their thoughtful participation in our search for a newly established residency officer for the district, who the board met earlier. After interviewing several candidates with impressive backgrounds in law enforcement, we do anticipate recommending a candidate for the board for approval at our next meeting on the 26th. Mr. Carlson has been especially helpful and I might say enthusiastic in effectively moving this process forward, given his intimate knowledge and relationship with this position and its value to the community. So again, we look forward to sharing more about our candidate at our next board meeting.
Thank you. Mr. Carlson?
Good evening. Just to add to Mr. Harrington's remarks, also at the November 26th Board of Education meeting, we'll have our residency officer, our current residency officer, Art Holtzman, prepare the final report on residency verification at that meeting, and we'll also have an opportunity to meet the newly appointed residency officer and tie all those in. In terms of budget, the TRS actuaries are projecting the 2021 employer contribution rate to be between 9.25 and 10.25%, which represents a rate-to-rate increase of between 4% and 16% impacting next year's budget. So in terms of dollars, it could range from an increase of $300,000 to $700,000. So we certainly anticipated that the TRS would increase the contribution rate heading into 2021. They indicated it as early as February of 2019. So that news just came out. The TRS will further clarify the exact rate in February of 2020, which will assist us in our budgeting process. Fortunately, just as a reminder, we were able to establish a TRS reserve, which will help mitigate the impact on the 2020 budget and utilize the money that we had set aside at the end of 2019. So an update on the tax refunds due to the county's error in applying the veterans exemptions. We've received a listing of over 300 residents from both towns, Southeast and Patterson, who are owed a tax refund. We anticipate that we'll get these checks out within the next 2 weeks, well in advance of the November 30th timeline that we established back in September. And so just so you're aware, some of these refunds are fewer than the postage that we will be placing on the stamps, which is extremely frustrating, but we are required to refund every single taxpayer. Following up on a conversation that we began last week in terms of stop arm cameras, I just want to make the board and community aware that all buses are equipped with cameras, safety cameras. However, beginning with these past purchases that we made as a result of Proposition number 2, beginning the summer of 2019, we purchased these stop arm cameras for all of our new buses. So prospectively, we are purchasing these enhanced camera systems for all of our new buses. We have yet to capture anyone on a stop arm camera, which is a good thing because we don't have no cars that pass our school buses. So that's a good thing. However, what we do will be certain to pass the footage over to law enforcement for them to follow up on. It was asked what the cost of these cameras are if we were to retrofit our existing buses, and it ranges from $3,700 to $5,500, depending on the size of the bus. So obviously, larger buses require more cameras and also higher pixelated cameras that can see for a longer distance. So I just again wanted to update the board on that based on our conversation from the last board meeting, and that concludes my comments for this evening.
Thank you. Dr. Randall?
Yes. Last Friday, several veterans throughout the Hudson Valley region came to the schools, and so they could share their stories and honor their service. So I just wanted to thank all the veterans who came out and share that with the board. That was a wonderful day, and thank our principals for hosting it. Also, I had my first key communicator committee meeting this past week. It was an excellent showing of organizations throughout the entire region of Brewster and Patterson. The first meeting was really kind of getting to know you and what is the purpose of the meeting, and really the purpose is for us to open the lines of communication between the school community and the community at large. So we are going to be continuing with that work. I shared the information also with Mr. Seaman, who will be also reaching out to the community in many different ways as well. And I'll keep you posted. Our next meeting will be in February. At this point, we're going to meet 3 times a year, but the group might decide to meet more than that, so I'll keep you posted. The Rotary at the meeting had asked if we would come out to volunteer for any activities that they have, and hopefully the board's okay with that. And there's some other organizations that would also really like us to come out and volunteer. The officer who's doing Christmas tree sale, so if the board has any questions about that, I'd have to answer that. Then one other thing is superintendent, I'm starting we went to a wonderful reception last Monday night down in the Lower Hudson area, and one of the keynote speakers spoke about student advocacy and student leadership. So I decided that working closely with the high school principal, the middle school principal, I'm going to be starting a superintendent's roundtable. I'll be meeting with leadership at each of the grade levels at the high school first, once a month with the building principal, in order to hear the students, get their thoughts, get their vision for the future, and then also we'll be meeting with Mr. Clark at the middle school. He's got a leadership group that will be planning to get together and kind of get the middle school students' thoughts and vision for the future, because I think their voices need to be heard. And then the very, very last thing, I just want to remind the board, I know your schedules are busy. If you can make it on Friday, we have a wonderful venue to visit over at the middle school, Wells Middle School. We start first at 8 o'clock in the library. We have a great lineup, and we want to thank the teachers who volunteered to host the board in the classrooms. I'm really excited. I got a little taste of what we're going to see over at the middle school. And then we're going to head over to see Mrs. Andriello's staff, CD Star, at 9:30. So whatever time you can get in your schedule, I appreciate it. Thank you. That concludes my comments.
Thank you. And now we have our student representative, Aaron Laura.
Thank you. On Saturday, the fall drama Peter and the Starcatcher closed. The fall choral concert is tomorrow at 7 o'clock in the Brewster High School Path. For fall sports, which have ended, 3 cross-country runners qualified for state championships. They'll run at SUNY Plattsburgh on Saturday. The students are Elsa Neubauer, Ben Radijak, and Patrick Ford. Winter sports started yesterday, and the first quarter ends on Friday. For choral and band groups, the NISMA Area All-State Festival is this weekend. And for most of the high schoolers, a lot of big applications for college, their deadlines have passed on November 1st, and admissions are starting to roll in. And last week, Brewster hosted a very successful Model UN conference for area high schools. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now we will move on to presentations, recognition, and discussion. And first up is Wells Middle School goals, Sharon Clark and Christopher Lee.
This is coming in by May while they hang up. I just want to thank Mr. Clark and Mrs. Fernandez for working hard on their goals. You'll notice again, board, that their goals pretty much fall under these board goals, district goals, and also are unique to Wells.
Okay, well, thank you for having us here. So the classrooms that you're going to visit, they're very excited. We had a faculty meeting today. They're very excited for the board's visit. We told them that you guys were excited about just getting more involved with the schools in general, and that you wanted to be more a part of the community. So we're really excited about it. So those who were voluntold to have you come in are really, really excited. Okay, so our guiding principle, we talked about this a lot because there's always, you know, it seems like school years have a pattern, and by the end of the year, everybody's pretty burnt out. So we started early, and we decided that less is more is going to be kind of our central focus. So that's it for our presentation tonight. I hope you all enjoyed it. So this is a book that all the administrators read over the summer, Leaders Eat Last, and it really spoke to us a lot. And a quote from it: "And when a leader embraces their responsibility to care for people instead of caring for numbers, when people will follow, solve problems, and see to it that the leader's vision comes to life the right way, the stable way, not the expedient way." So our primary focus this year is to take care of our people as much as possible, and we think about it every single day. This was our school-wide read, one for the Murphys, one school, one community, one book. Thanks to our PTA, who I hope Ms. Kowaleski got my message today. I returned your phone call. We have the author potentially coming to visit our school, so the kids don't know this yet, but it's a really exciting thing that we're going to be able to pull off, and they'll meet with all the different grade levels. Goal number 1. To be as transparent as possible without compromising student privacy, specifically around discipline, connecting PBIS to faculty meetings. So we want the staff to know what's going on in the office, because a lot of times they think we're trying to hide something from them, and we're not, but sometimes we have to err on the side of not revealing too much about what's going on with individual students. So we're trying to be as open as possible. We're presenting those things that happen. We're presenting data at faculty meetings. As Dr. Bandlow mentioned, we just started a new community action team, called it Bearcat. My son goes to Binghamton, so that's the Binghamton Bearcat. So community action team, members of student government. We also have a leadership club. We also have the National Junior Honor Society. So these clubs all meet individually. So we said, okay, there's 3 different things going on. There's a lot of different initiatives going on. Why don't we meet with them all together, just the leadership from those different clubs, meet with them all together with administrative presence. So when Dr. Bandlow asked me if she could come in and sit and meet with student representation, it's already pretty much been put in place where we're going to be doing this on a monthly basis. So how are we doing?
So how are we doing? We are really honing in on progressive discipline and restorative practices. Up until this point, we're proud to say we've had no out-of-school suspensions in comparison to 6 last year during Q1. We want to improve our school culture through faculty shout-outs and highlighting accomplishments in person and on social media. Our PBIS initiatives and social emotional learning, and really focusing again on positive behaviors through our Bear Bucks and Grizzly Bucks reward system. And we didn't want our school-wide community book talk to end there. So we want to keep one for the Murphys ongoing, and we do this at grade level meetings. We start every grade level meeting with our students with a new quote from the book so that it's not forgotten. And we do different activities during those meetings so that we can have our students engage in discussion. We have quarterly calls to action, which you'll hear about a little bit later. And we are trying to really focus in on celebrating diversity and the students' identity so they feel fully accepted. Goal 2. So we'd like to build on the strength of our community by shared collaborative space. How are we going to do this? We are going to encourage a kind of taking departmental shared space and revisioning it. So it's starting to happen in bits and pieces where a department might say, hey, you know, we don't really need this space, let's reinvent it, make it a place where colleagues can get together. And the long-term vision is perhaps having a mindfulness room, a coffee break room, a conference room, student learning centers, and different kinds of ideas with our space. And again, focusing on PBIS, really bridging the faculty and the PBIS members, which includes students, administrators, parents, and bridging this work, crossing over to faculty meetings monthly so that everything we do is a lot more transparent.
So we established the Sunshine Committee. We've always had the Sunshine Club at the middle school, which basically, if something happens, if somebody has a child or if somebody gets married or whatever, they go out, everybody contributes, they buy a gift, and you know, it's a very nice thing. So we wanted to expand on that. So we created a whole committee, a Sunshine Committee, and we meet monthly where we talk about, okay, how can we improve school culture? So we do things like, you know, now we have departments bringing snacks to each faculty meeting. So they're taking turns. So we're just, how do we include the entire community in improving the entire community rather than just being driven by, you know, what we can do. You know, if there's a late night because they have parent-teacher conferences, well, let's all get together and we'll have dinner together, that sort of thing. So it's just really whatever efforts we can do to build culture, we're trying to do that as much as possible. Engaging staff in conversations about moving from departmentalized office to shared collaborative spaces. This idea just comes from the fact that we become very departmentalized sometimes. We belong to a school, and then within that school we belong to a department. And you know, sometimes we hide in those department offices. So how can we, you know, not just make people part of a department, but part of the larger community? How can we better utilize those spaces? Educating staff about social emotional needs of students. Engaging students and staff in conversations about seeking help when needed. So we have come across countless social emotional problems. We have an amazing guidance and support staff at the middle school, but it's an ongoing battle just to try to meet all the needs, and we try to have these conversations as much as possible with kids. If you're struggling with something, please let us know. We have grade level meetings every single month at the 6th, the 7th, and the 8th grade level, where again we can engage in these discussions about things you should do, things you shouldn't do, things that are not good for you, and we try to keep it as positive as we possibly can. With our reward system, we have raffles based on our PBIS system of Bear Bucks. And our quarterly calls to action. In the past, we've had a theme of the month that was associated to our school-wide read. We found that, you know, in the spirit of sort of less is more, we said, okay, let's do it quarterly, but let's talk about it more deeply. Okay, so we are each month we have, or each quarter we have a different theme that we focus on, and we keep beating the drum on that particular theme, and to make sure that everyone's hearing it all over the place. And you'll see some of that in our final presentation, final piece of the presentation. Okay, goal 3: establishing clear expectations for team PLCs built around alignment of curriculum and assessment. The PLC times that we give them are very focused. We'll have the teachers fill out a Google form afterwards to see what kind of work they're doing, just so we can see where we can support them when needed. Alignment of curriculum and assessments. Strategic coherence plan alignment based on student outcomes. SCP-based learning walks. Also conversations during pre and post observations. How are you incorporating the SCP skills into your daily lessons?
All right, so how are we doing? Focused discussions on common curriculum and assessments during faculty meetings and teacher observations. And specifically, I'll speak to teacher observations. We really try to go into coaching mode when we meet with our teachers prior to their evaluations. And that's the time that we really hone in on assessments and how are you assessing your students. Assessment should be weaved throughout a lesson. It should never be just the end game or end results. And students, we talk a lot about how students don't want to be surprised, much like adults, we don't want to be surprised. So just doing a lot of work around students being aware of how they're assessed and involving them in the design of the assessment. So there's a huge focus on that when we talk with our teachers. Allowing for more time to collaborate whenever we can. We factor in extended PLCs if we need to. They also have team time and faculty meetings. Strategic learning walks, again, how are students developing our SCP skills? And these are all our new classes that students are fortunate to be engaged in. This year we have a brand new trade class, which I'm sure those of you who are on Twitter, he has a very heavy Twitter presence, and he's showing off all his
I don't know if I time to teach.
I know. He really works on projects that are relevant to our students. They've recently made phone stands where they could, I actually saw bear phone stands, and the challenge was to create a phone stand where it would support your phone in both the vertical and horizontal position. But these are things our students are really excited to not only make, but to take home. And we have project-based learning, STEAM, our pumpkin challenge, hopefully this author visit coming up, Project Lead the Way, Geography and Western Hemisphere, Science Research, Language and Culture, Music, Math and Culture, Intro to World Languages, Art Makerspace, Robotics, Computer Programming, and STEAM. So tons of electives that our students can explore.
So these are our quarterly calls to action. The first one is bitter or better, choose better. The second one is be someone's hero. And the third one is to build on relationships. And then we end the year with We Are Wells. We start the year with We Are Wells, we end the year with We Are Wells, because that's just sort of the cornerstone of our thinking in our community. So we have a little video for you.
We apologize in advance. Some of the
It's
audio
tough to
gets
cover
loud.
everything that goes on in a middle school, so we tried to capture it as best as possible in 4 minutes. So you'll see a lot of the things and themes that we've been talking about throughout this presentation.
The second presentation is the long-range financial plan by Mr. Carlson.
Always a tough act to follow. Students and, then we have to talk about this boring stuff. So I will try not to bore you. So this is the second year we're presenting our long-range financial plan, which runs through the 23-24 school year. Before I really get into it, just want to give a couple of caveats. The long-range financial plan itself is available on our website, so if you can take some time and go and look at it. It's very, very informative. It has a lot of information on there. I'm certainly not going to get into that level of detail this evening. The plan itself is based on broad assumptions from past results and anticipated conditions. Should be short enough to be predictable, but not too long and long enough to reveal emerging issues. However, generally speaking, the long-range financial plan is only useful for the first couple of years. It becomes less useful each year into the future. So really, our focus is on years 1 and 2, and less so on years 3 through 5. For tonight's presentation, I really want to focus more on the trends and less on the dollars, because one thing is certain is that the future is uncertain. So this time last year, we presented our long-range financial plan. And not more than 2 months later did we learn of the Algonquin natural gas transmission station's impact on our tax cap heading into 1920, which totally changed the financial outlook of the district just 2 months later. So again, recognizing that the future is uncertain, it's more important to focus on the emerging issues that we have. Economic conditions in terms of funding, state and federal legislation, new mandates, ESSA being the most prominent at this point, collective bargaining agreements, involving unforeseen capital needs. So another important caveat that the Controller's Office stresses in their guidance materials: do not be alarmed by future funding gaps. If we were to prepare a long-range financial plan 5 years ago, it likely would have presented a large funding gap in the 2019-20 school year. However, each year the Board of Education adopts a balanced budget through through certain mitigation measures. And a long-range financial plan helps us identify, adapt, and plan for the future. So we begin with our instructional programs. We're several years into the Strategic Coherence Plan. We also have the Every Student Succeeds Act, and with that, certain new mandates. Just in the 2019-20 school year alone, we saw the addition of counselors at the K-5 level in terms of mental health supports. Something that presents as both a challenge and an opportunity are anticipated retirements over the next several years. We have many instructional leaders who are of retirement age and will likely be retiring over the next 5 to 10 years, which presents, again, a challenge and an opportunity. So our new educators will need to make sure that we provide opportunities for professional learning so they're ready and prepared in entering the classroom. Moving on to our revenues, property taxes make up about 75% of our budget. And the most important thing to take away from this slide is that the tax cap is working, albeit at a very slow pace. So the tax burden as a percentage of income is declining as a result of the tax cap, so that's a good thing. Over the past 8 years, our tax levy increases have averaged 2.2%, and that also accounts for the 4.1% increase we had entering the 1920 school year because of Algonquin. So on average, over the past 8 years, 2.2% tax levy increase. Contrast that with the adjusted gross incomes of Brewster residents, which has data available through 2016, and that has had an increase of 2.9%. That is only available through 2016. With the improved economy, it's believed that AGI, adjusted gross income, has actually increased more than in the past. So again, the tax burden as a percentage of the homeowner's income is becoming a smaller portion. So the tax cap is working, albeit at a very slow pace. Moving on to state and federal aid. State aid makes up about 20% of our revenue budget and has been wildly unpredictable over the past decade. And we've seen swings as a low of minus 13% in 10-11 to as high as 10.4% in 13-14. We've also seen certain state and federal legislation that's impacted us. From the state level, the gap elimination adjustment wreaked havoc on districts for the earlier part of the 2010s. The federal government had the American Reinvestment and Recovery Act, which sent money to school districts and assisted them. In recent years in Brewster, our total state aid has increased consistently, but it's mostly due to increases in building aid, and that correlates directly with the increases in our debt payments related to our capital construction. So building aid is not available to enhance the instructional program, and rather it's set aside to pay for the outstanding debt on capital improvements. Excluding building aid, the trend is certainly not encouraging. Over the past 4 completed years, non-building aid, state aid, each year the increase is lessened. So we've gone from a 7.1% increase to 6.8 to 4.3 down to 1.7 for this 2018-19 year, which just completed. So the trend is certainly not encouraging. The state budget director has been out discussing the state's budget challenges and has made mention of allocations to education spending, and has basically said that because of the increases in education spending, other areas of the state budget, like transportation, infrastructure, and health services, have either had to remain flat or even decrease to allow for increases in education spending. So what I read into that is that this trend will likely continue, and that state aid will be not a significant increase, at least entering the 2021 school year. Moving on to our expenditures, salaries and benefits that we all know make up about 75% of our budget. Salaries alone make up about 50% of that budget. All employees of the school district operate under an employment contract. Unions are in the district are the AAB, Administrative Association of Brewster, BTA, Brewster Teachers Association Clerical Unit, and the SEIU Service Employees International Unit. We also have non-affiliated members who have individual contracts. Those are non-union members, and their contracts are updated annually with the Board of Ed. So one of the challenges of the tax cap are that the tax cap took effect immediately. The challenge that is associated with that is that the reaction to the tax cap can only take place prospectively. So what we've done, or we've been able to establish through negotiations and partnership with the BTA and bargaining units at this point, is that the bargaining units have agreed to contracts for new employees that limit step increases to just 2%, which more closely aligns with the tax cap. The challenge that we have is the salary schedules for existing employees were established literally decades before the tax cap came into existence. So those step increases range from 1% all the way up to 6.7%. Obviously, a 6.7% step increase is not sustainable in a tax cap environment. So again, through partnership with at least the BTA and clerical units at this point, is that they've agreed to salary schedules that more closely align with the tax cap on a prospective basis. So as staff retires or resigns, their replacement to new employees will be under the new salary schedules, which will assist the district in dealing with the tax cap in future years. Moving on to benefits, which make up about 25% of the budget, and beginning with health insurance. So much like the salary schedules, the employee health insurance contributions towards the premium costs were also established in contract before the tax cap came into play. So currently, among the different bargaining units, the employee contribution rates range from 6.5% of premiums to 20% of premiums. All bargaining units have agreed to contracts that increase health insurance contributions for future employees. Again, a prospective change that will take place over time after employees retire or resign. This is a glass half full, glass half empty. This third bullet here. Health insurance premiums have increased by an average of 3.2% over the past 10 years. So certainly that exceeds what the tax cap will allow. But if you contrast that with some of the other health insurance providers in the state, the Medicare plan and the Swiss CHIP plan, which are the two main statewide programs, the Putnam Northern Westchester Health Benefits Consortium plan has actually outperformed those in terms of cost containment. So it's a silver lining. It's bad, but it's not as bad as it could be, I guess. Moving on to pensions, this is a chart that shows the employer pension contribution rates over the past 30 years. So all employees of New York State or local governments or school districts are eligible to participate in a pension system. The ERS plan, which is shown here in the light blue, represents employees who are non-certificated, which would include bus drivers, custodians, cleaners, cafeteria employees, clerical workers. And as you can see, the increase in the employer contribution rate, back in the 90s, the employer contribution rate was just 1.2% of member salaries. Fast forward to the 2010s, and the average contribution rate in the 2010s was all the way up to 15.9% of member salaries, which is obviously a significant increase. The TRS system is the dark blue bar on the bottom. That applies to teachers, teaching assistants, and administrators. Similarly, in the 90s, the average contribution rate was 5.7% of member payroll. Fast forward to the 2010s, and the average contribution rate was all the way up to 11.7%. So obviously, the pension contributions had a significant impact on our budget. And back in the 90s, it was a much more palatable contribution rate. 2010s certainly has presented a series of challenges as we've experienced over the past 4 or 5 years. So again, as I mentioned, all employees of the state of New York are able to participate in the pension system. Much like our local bargaining with our units, the ERS and TRS pension systems have also negotiated a reduced benefit for employees generally hired on or after January 1st, 2010. Again, a perspective change for all new employees who enter the retirement system after that date. And it calls for increased service time, reduced benefits, longer vesting period, and a few other changes. Moving on to capital planning and debt management. So much like your own home, the school facilities require preventative maintenance, replacing windows, replacing doors, replacing roofs, repairing and replacing HVAC system, plumbing, etc. You name it. Very similar to your own home, except on a macro level. So it's very important that we monitor capital investments and make sure that they're maintained and replaced when necessary before an emergency occurs. The state requires a building condition survey be completed once every 5 years, which requires a licensed architect or engineer to come in and evaluate each school building, identify necessary repairs and mechanical system replacements, and prioritize them in terms of need. It's then spread out over the course of 5 years. Building condition surveys do once every 5 years. And in the 2010-11 year, we had a building condition survey which evolved into what became the December 2014 bond referendum that then ultimately became our district-wide renovation project that was just completed this past fall. So the magnitude of work obviously requires a significant monetary investment, which can take the form of construction bond, capital reserve, or the utilization of fund balance. Historically in Brewster, we've committed to capital planning through the issuance of construction bonds while timing the extinguishment of expiring debt. And what I mean by that is, you'll see here in the 2021 year, we're going to be converting some bond anticipation notes, which are short-term borrowings, to construction bonds and pay them off over a longer period of time. What you don't see here is that we have some debt that's expiring from past construction, I believe, on Brewster High School many, many years ago. Recognizing that, we made sure that we meet with our finance committee. Our finance committee reviews these plans on a semi-annual basis. We recognize that, and we make sure that we time for the extinguishment of old debt before introducing new debt. And what that does, it allows the district to maintain a level commitment to debt, evidenced by this straight green line. Fast forward to the 27-28 year, and you see that we have a significant amount of debt falling off the books, which will allow us to begin planning for 27-28. It's really not that far away in terms of getting voter approval, designing a scope, voter approval, commissioner of education approval for the work, performing the work, filing final cost reports, and getting and then finally going out to bonds. So really, we're going to be over the course of the next year or two, we're going to be really looking at completing our building condition survey and identifying our needs, because there's certainly no shortage in needs and maintenance of our facilities. So I add this in. So back in 2015, we issued a $26 million bond to permanently finance the Wells Middle School renovation project that was completed in, I think, 2011, 12-ish. The tax levy increase in the ensuing year, 16-17, was just 1.9%. So we issued a $26 million bond, and the tax levy increase the following year was just 1.9%. The reason for that is because there was expiring debt that fell off the books that was replaced by the new debt. So that is how we, plan and maintain our debt. Again, we've met with our finance committee that we've been discussing this ongoing capital improvement project that just concluded this past fall. It's our intent to issue a bond later this summer. Fortunately, the rate environment has improved, and the Fed just cut rates in September, which is certainly bodes well for us as we enter the summer. But again, we need to be mindful of 27, 28 when we have that debt expiring. We want to begin to plan for improving our facilities. And again, I just want to thank the Finance Committee for being involved in those conversations along with our fiscal advisors. Moving on to the transportation fleet replacement, we talk about this each year. Proposition number 2, our fleet replacement plan. For the past 6 years, we've committed to it. I won't belabor it too much because I think everyone's pretty familiar with the fleet replacement plan. Just recognizing that we have a challenge when we've got 16 vehicles that are over age 16 years old. And this data is from the last March presentation. You'll see even on tonight's board agenda, we have 2 vehicles that are being disposed of coming out of that age group. So it's been a challenge, and it's been a challenge because it hasn't been committed to over the life of the district. So what we do each year is we request a bond anticipation note to be paid out over 5 years. And while this chart certainly seems daunting, I'll do my best to simplify it. So basically, for each borrowing, we spread out and we pay over 5 years. Within that 5-year period, an older bond anticipation note is paid off in full. So it's replaced by the new debt. And in turn, over time, we have a level commitment, and there's no increase on the tax levy. So we began our proposition number 2 at about a $500,000 commitment. Over the past 3 years, we've increased that commitment to about $750,000, which will allow us to get to the level that we need to in terms of having a 12-year replacement cycle. And then the incremental increase in cost is just about $50,000 a year until we hit 23, 24, and then it becomes embedded in the tax levy, and there's no additional cost because the new debt will replace the old debt. Similarly, we've adopted an instructional technology replacement plan very similar to our bus replacement plan. And that stems from being the recipient of $1.6 million worth of Smart School Bond Act proceeds that were utilized over the past 4 years. Now, wisely, we didn't utilize the full $1.6 million in year 1. Instead, we staggered it, utilizing $400,000 a year, recognizing that had we injected $1.6 million worth of technology, we would have created a $1.6 million hole when that technology eventually becomes obsolete. So strategically, we began infusing about $400,000 a year over the past 4 years because we recognize that obsolescence typically takes place over a 3 to 5 year period. We're utilizing a 4-year period for replacing our obsolete technology. So again, chart similar to the fleet replacement plan, and you'll see that each year incrementally we are going to request that we borrow $400,000 to be paid off over 4 years, which equals the same $1.6 million that we reported in the Smart Schools Bond Act. And that really just allows us to maintain the equipment that we have today. So you'll see here during these years, we utilize Smart Schools Bond Act proceeds and no district funds were utilized. But an installment purchase agreement is not a foreign concept to the district. In fact, in May of 2014, the district issued a $500,000 installment purchase agreement, which will actually be paid off at the conclusion of the 1920 school year. So fortunately, entering 2021, the net change on the budget is it's really budget neutral. It's actually a slight decrease because of this prior installment purchase agreement that will now be paid off. So entering 2021, we're in a very good position to be continuing our instructional technology replacement plan. And again, similar to the fleet replacement plan, beginning in 23-24, these costs become embedded in the budget and there's no additional increase. As a new one comes on, an old one falls off. So in summary, the plan allows us to identify emerging issues, adapt by applying counterbalancing measures, and resolve issues before they compound. Again, the biggest caveat here is the future is unknown, so the further you go in the future, the less reliable our estimate. The plan's available on our website. I certainly encourage everyone to take a look at it. I put my heart and soul into it, so I really hope that at least somebody's listening. And just a public service announcement, we have our Budget 101 workshops beginning in September, actually next week, 1 week from tonight. We have 3 Budget 101 workshops that are a precursor for the budget development process. I think our first budget presentation is the last week in January. I want to say January 28th of 2020. So this is a great opportunity to learn more about the budget process, what goes into it, the challenges and opportunities that we face, something that gets presented in the long-range financial plan. So I encourage everyone to come and tell your friends and neighbors. If not, we'll certainly be posting all of our Budget 101 materials on the website. Any questions from the board?
Okay, so with the 5-year building condition survey, we had done one, we did a number of construction, so when it came due the last time, we got a waiver.
Yes.
It wasn't required because we were in the middle of construction. When is the next one planned to occur?
So actually with the last state budget, there was legislation that is now staggering building condition survey among all of the 700 school districts. So one of the challenges that the state and school districts had was that everyone's building condition survey was due in the same year. So while Brewster had theirs done in 2010-11, so did Carmel, so did Mahopac, so did every school district in New York State. So that really put a stress on the state education department, number one, to review these, and also on the availability of architects, engineers to perform it. Then later, it put a stress on contractors when everyone is trying to bid work for construction on the same timeline. So the state now staggered the requirement to take place over a period of 3 years. They haven't yet released when Brewster's building condition survey is due. Excuse me, but they've also, in addition to staggering it, those districts that are not required to have, ordinarily the building condition survey would be required in the 2021 school year. For those districts that are being delayed a year, those districts will have to perform what's called an annual visual inspection, which was something that was actually eliminated by the state several years ago. So if you get a waiver, you have to do an annual visual inspection, which is kind of like a top level, just above the surface review. And then within 2 years, you'll have to perform a building condition survey. I'm hopeful that we'll have a building condition survey in the 2021 year, just because I want to begin, our planning, our capital planning. Glenn Fryer, our director of facilities, is here this evening. He couldn't wait to come look at our long-range financial plan. But he'll obviously, have a huge role in that. So I'm hopeful that we'll be part of the first wave. In all likelihood, the state will identify those districts who have had schools that have failed their building condition survey, because you can get satisfactory or unsatisfactory. In all likelihood, they'll first earmark those districts who have unsatisfactory buildings in the past, put them in the first wave, and in all likelihood, school districts like ours who have had major construction will probably be pushed toward that third year. So 2021, possibly, 2022, 23, probably.
And the minor one that will be done, is that done internally? Or is that something that we contract with our architects for? I know they'll do the big one, but can we handle the minor one internally?
I'm not certain if you're allowed to do it internally. I think it would probably be best if we had an engineer perform that, but I'm not certain.
And that'd be something that's handled by the contracts?
No, that would be something that we put out individually.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, up next is public remarks, and this part of public remarks is specific to the action items that are listed below. So if anyone in the community would like to make remarks about any of the action items, this is your chance. There's a 3-minute time limit, and we just ask that you give us your name and stand at the podium. Anyone have comments tonight? No? Okay, so we will move on to action items. And number 1 is the disposal of district property. A, transportation vehicles, number 223 and number 230, and B, technology equipment.
Yes, as I mentioned, over time, our vehicles become obsolete, they fall out of service. These two buses in particular are both over 18 years old and have significant issues with engines and rust. In terms of technology equipment, as I mentioned, our equipment becomes obsolete over a period of time and ultimately needs to be replaced. Both are being recommended by the directors for replacement.
I need a motion and a second. Motion Scott, second Eric. Thank you. Any comments or questions?
Just one quick, there's over 300 Chromebooks. This is part of the staggered technology replacement plan?
Yes, and Mr. Trujillo is here, you can add.
Yeah, there's a number of them, and one of the, as we are replacing some of them, we're taking some of the old ones and using them for parts for new ones. You will note on there that there are actually some that are less than our intended 4 years old. Those have become damaged beyond repair. But that's part of our insurance policy. We bring in a fair amount of money each year as part of this insurance from parents, providing that at a low cost, but that helps to repair and replace them, and that's why some of them are newer, but they're just too damaged to be able to be replaced. But yeah, that's what those Chromebooks, there's a lot of them actually that we have still set aside that we are not replacing, that are not disposing of, but we're going to be using for refill, for loaners, and for parts for while we still have those other models in place.
Like the new technology class where they're teaching the kids to fix them, that's what they're getting the
Yep,
bill from. Okay.
exactly.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor? 5. All those opposed? 0. Motion passes 5-0. On to number 2, approval of instructional services contract with the New York School for the Deaf.
Yes, this is a contract for our special needs students. Plays out of district. It's been reviewed by our attorneys and recommended for approval by us.
Thank you. I need a motion and a second. Motion Glenn, second Eric. Thank you. Any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? 5. All those opposed? 0. The motion passes 5-0. Number 3, the approval of annual New York State and local retirement systems standard workday reporting resolution.
Yes, this is an annual resolution that is required by the ERS pension system, and it establishes the standard workday for appointed officials who are not covered by a terms and conditions agreement or a collective bargaining unit. We have one such employee, the tax collector, Susan Bacco, for the town salaries.
I need a motion and a second. Krista, motion. Second, Scott. Thank you. Any questions or comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? 5. All those opposed? 0. The motion passes 5-0. Number 4 on action items, approval of revised stipends for co-curricular clubs at Wells Middle School, Jazz Club, National Junior Honor Society, Yearbook, Multimedia Club. And that's you, Mr.
Okay, so this action item reflects changes to those noted Schedule D positions at the middle school that help to better really honor the nature of the work along with the time necessary to effectively serve as an advisor to these folks.
I need a motion and a second. Motion from Scott, second Eric, thanks. Any comments or questions?
And this is just standard stuff that every couple of years you review them, value them after you read them.
Correct. And it's in line with, or better, it's better alignment with middle school and high school for this action.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, all those in favor? 5. All those opposed? 0. Motion passes 5-0. Number 5, the approval of side letter of agreement with the clerical chapter of the BTA regarding clarification of vacation time accruals.
Okay, so this side letter, again, provides clarity between the district and the clerical unit when acknowledging vacation time and years of service for those individuals that may move from specifically the SEIU to the clerical chapter during their time of employment at Worcester. And it has been reviewed by our attorney and is recommended for approval.
Need a motion and a second. Motion Glenn, second Eric. Krista, I'm sorry. Any comments or questions? none, all those in favor? 5, all those opposed, 0. Motion passes 5-0. And number 6, the approval of separation and release, employee number 617.
So this agreement again reflects a good faith gesture by the district in allowing this employee who has recently tendered their resignation, effective June 30th, to forego the 1-year notice in order to still receive the contractual benefit paid sick day by him.
I need a motion and a second. Eric, second by Glenn. Any comments or questions? All right, seeing none, all those in favor? 5, all those opposed, 0, motion passes 5-0. Okay, so now we move on to the consent agenda. I don't know if there's anything of note in the personnel.
Just might note that the district has historically honored the hourly rates for employees in the SEIU that have moved into a different title. So there's one individual noted that reflects a revision in the salary step to be aligned with that consistency.
We need a motion in a second on the consent agenda. Motion Scott, second Eric. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? 5, all those opposed, 0. Motion passes 5-0. On to remarks. This is the time for public remarks. Anyone who has, wants to come to the podium and identify themselves, you have 3 minutes to address any remarks or comments to the board. Sure, just go up to the podium and just say your name for everyone, please.
I'm Connie Hussey, and I just want to say that I'm at the middle school, and it's very impressive, the presentation that I saw. I saw a little bit at the middle school, but like all the stuff that we're doing at the middle school is just awesome. I am so happy to be there and to be a part of it. And especially we're doing a kindness week this week, which is so important, and the kids are all excited over it. So like it's just a lot of really great stuff happening.
Hi, I'm Jamie Calvin. Just wanted to talk about the residency officer position a little bit. So I understand you guys have a couple of candidates that you've interviewed. I know someone that did apply that didn't get an interview. He was former SRO in our schools, a veteran, a sheriff, a detective, worked for the Putnam County executive, and didn't get an interview, presumably maybe because he doesn't speak Spanish. So what I'm interested in is seeing the caliber of the person that is chosen, because when you have a resume like that and you're a member of the community and can't get an interview, I think that says a lot about the person that did get the interview and hopefully the person that gets the job. Last year we went through this exercise of being told that the residency officer has to be an admin. Now we're at the point that they're not an admin. I questioned that a couple of times. Why does it have to be an admin? And then now there's no admin requirement, suddenly. So I just think it's a little bit weird of an evolution of having to have an admin, having candidates that are members of our community have such stellar resumes, and then not being able to get an interview. The other week we were here and we heard about Brewster High School's goals. And we had seen that there's been a need for E&L teachers to be added to Brewster High School, which they were. And they were added to support kids that are learning English as a new language. And now we also heard the other week that we are removing a lot of those English language courses for them to be able to graduate. So we've sacrificed these kids getting instructed in English to raise their graduation rates. So now these kids who speak Spanish at home, or their native language at home, in their community and at school, the last vestige of where we were going to teach them English so that they have a fighting chance out there in the community to get a good job, we've now taken that back and we've scaled that back so that they have much less English in school. So now we've taken all of their opportunities to assimilate to our community and to the native language of the area, and yet we're going back and potentially dismissing candidates who don't speak Spanish. So I just think that there's a little bit of discrepancy there of being able to say that we're doing the best for our students and the community when we're not necessarily, teaching the kids that need English, the language, and then not necessarily hiring people because they don't speak the language that we're now requiring staff to have. So just wanted to bring that up.
Any other public remarks? Okay, so we will close public remarks. And in terms of responding to what we can respond to now, the residency officer, all of the candidates were law enforcement personnel. Is that the case?
I believe so. Certainly all the residents, the vast majority, if not all, have a lot closer to that.
Anything else that we respond to now, or we'll take our
I think it's important to note that even though I was not here last year, it was heard that out of the task force, that was something that the residency task force was hoping for as well. But we thank you for your comments, but listen to very carefully.
Thank you. Okay, next item up is a summary of email communications to the board. I'll take that one. This week we in the last 2 weeks since our last meeting, we received one email requesting information about the residency task force and the residency verification process. So there's already been scheduled a presentation on both of those things for the next meeting, November 26th. So we'll be able to address both of those, the status of the verification process and the task force at that meeting. So that's November 26th. On to board remarks, BOE committee updates. Anyone have any updates?
I'll just say the Brewster Education Foundation had its Corvette raffle this weekend. We thank the community very much for their continued support of the BEF. Our next major fundraiser is the Brewster's Got Talent, which is a very popular community event that everybody should put on their calendars at the end of January. So we look forward to continuing to raise funds that are sent right back into the schools and into the hands of the teachers to enhance the experience for all the students.
And I'll add that Sonia and I attended the SCP, I don't know, is it the advisory committee or the task force? What happened? Steering committee. So we attended that last week or the week before, and that is comprised of teachers, administrators, students, community members, board members, and the point is to address the strategic coherence plan, what we've done in the past, how we're going to move it forward, and I was not part of the original steering committee, so it was new to me, and it was a very interesting meeting. There's a lot of different views from all of the different groups that are there, and poor Michelle had to totally throw her agenda out the window. We took that right over, but it was interesting and basically trying to figure out the best way to steer the SCP into the future, and that's the next meeting for that is December. Anyone else?
Just want to follow up. Last week we had spoke about the drug addiction brain presentation by Dr. Dewey. I forgot to make mention that Dr. Dewey did think it was something he could roll out appropriately to lower levels. It was done in the high school, and I was just curious if we might want to look at this as something, speaking to administration, social counselors, all those people involved, to see if there's something that we could appropriately to the middle school level. That seems where a lot of the kids are more at risk. Some of these behaviors are established by the time they get to the high school. So if we could maybe get them more information at an earlier stage, it might be something beneficial for them. It did go up to last week I met up with the Patterson Town Board. I was surprised to find out our very own Mary Smith sits on the board of Patterson. So I didn't realize that until I was driving home, so I had to send her an email to apologize. Richard Williams, the supervisor, he appreciated that we are coming out. I thanked him for allowing our high school science programs. They visit the water plant, the treatment facility up there, and they go out of the way to let the teachers come in. And he is also a Brewster alumni, so it's good to see that they're in the area. I went to the Southeast Town Board to say hi, and I guess I missed all the exciting meetings. This was a very fast meeting. You go in, they had the brief fight, and then we went home, so it was very nice. The middle school, not this weekend, but next weekend, is doing their production of Elf Jr., so we want to make sure that everybody gets out, because there's no way to start the season better without Elf. So, thank you.
All right, anyone else? Okay, on to upcoming meetings. The next meeting is November 26th. And any remarks that anyone has or comments, you can also email to the Board of Education and the Superintendent at boe@brewsterschools.org. We do not have executive session, we do. Yeah, we don't, we do not. So I need a motion to adjourn the meeting in a second. Motion Scott, second Eric. All those in favor? 5, all those opposed, 0. Motion passes 5-0.
Cool.
Right?